My name is Emily, and I'm 32. I'm sitting in a hospital room holding my daughter Sophie's hand as she sleeps, her small chest rising with each shallow breath. The monitors beep softly, but they can't drown out the ache in my heart. My husband Nathan took the money we saved for Sophie's leukemia treatment and spent it on his mother's Caribbean vacation. How do you forgive someone you loved so deeply when they betray your child? Have you ever faced a betrayal that broke you? Share where you're watching from below, and if this story hits home, please like and subscribe for more. The rain tapped against the kitchen window, a steady rhythm that matched the churn in my stomach. I was 32, hunched over our wobbly table in our Ohio home, surrounded by bills and a half-empty coffee mug. Sophie was asleep upstairs, her stuffed bunny tucked under her chin. I'd opened our bank app to pay the electric bill, but my eyes froze on the screen. $10,000. Gone. Withdrawn from Sophie's treatment fund 2 days ago. My heart thudded. It had to be a mistake. I refreshed the page, willing the numbers to change, but they stared back, unyielding. That money was our lifeline, scraped together from overtime, shifts, skipped vacations, and donations from church. Sophie's leukemia treatments weren't cheap, and every penny mattered. My fingers shook as I scrolled through the transaction history. No details, just a cold line, withdrawal, $10,000. I grabbed my phone and dialed Nathan, who was at his mother Deborah's house helping her with some errand. "Hey, Em," he answered, his voice casual, like he was flipping through a magazine. "What's up, Nathan?" "I'm looking at the bank account," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. $10,000 is missing from Sophie's fund. What happened? There was a pause, the kind that makes your skin prickle. "Oh, that," he said, finally his tone shifting to something vague like he was dodging a pothole. "It's for a good reason. Okay, I'll explain when I get home. Don't worry. I gripped the phone tighter. "Nathan, that's Sophie's money. For her treatments. You can't just take it and not tell me." I know, he said, rushed now. "Look, I'm in the middle of something. We'll talk tonight, I promise." He hung up before I could push further. I sat there, the rain louder now, my coffee cold. Nathan's promises used to feel like anchors, solid and sure. We'd built a life together, raising Sophie, weathering her diagnosis. But that pause on the phone, that dodge, felt like a crack in the foundation. I opened my laptop, determined to find answers. My hands moved fast, logging into our joint email account. Maybe the bank had sent a notification. That's when I saw it, buried in the inbox, a confirmation email from a travel agency. "Thank you for your purchase, Deborah Miller. 7-night Caribbean cruise departing next month. Total $10,000. My breath caught. The payment linked to our account. The same account we'd sworn to protect for Sophie. I read it again, hoping I'd misread, but the words were clear. Nathan had used our daughter's treatment money to fund his mother's vacation. My chest tightened, like someone had pressed a fist against my ribs. Deborah. Of course it was her. She'd always had this hold over Nathan, her only son, her golden boy. I remembered her sharp comments at Thanksgiving, how she'd called my cooking passable and questioned why I let Sophie stay up past 8. She'd never liked me, never thought I was good enough for her son. But this taking money meant to save her granddaughter's life. It was unthinkable. I grabbed my phone again, this time texting Lila, my best friend and a nurse at Sophie's hospital. "Lila, I need you. Nathan took Sophie's treatment money. I think he gave it to his mom for a cruise." My fingers hesitated before hitting send, shame creeping in. Admitting this felt like exposing a wound, but Lila was the only one I trusted to hear it. Her reply came fast. "What, Emily? Are you serious? Call him back. Now. I'm coming over." I could picture her dark hair pulled back, her nurse's scrubs still on, her voice sharp with the same protectiveness she showed Sophie during chemo. I tried Nathan again, but it went to voicemail. His cheerful greeting mocked me. "Hey, it's Nathan. Leave a message." I hung up, my hands clammy. The kitchen felt smaller, the walls closing in. I glanced at the fridge where Sophie's latest drawing hung, a crayon sketch of me, Nathan, and her, all holding hands under a bright sun. Her 6-year-old optimism made my throat ache. How could Nathan look at that drawing and do this? I stood, pacing my socks, scuffing the linoleum. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe Deborah had manipulated him, spun some sob story. Nathan wasn't cruel. He'd cried harder than I did when Sophie was diagnosed, holding her tiny hand through her first IV. But the email didn't lie. The money was gone, and he hadn't told me. That secrecy, that choice, felt like a blade slipped between my ribs. Lila's car pulled into the driveway, headlights cutting through the rain. I opened the door before she could knock, and she stepped inside, her face a mix of worry and anger. "Tell me everything," she said, tossing her bag on the couch. I showed her the email, my voice low so Sophie wouldn't wake. "He said he'd explain later, but Lila, this is our daughter's future." "How could he?" She scanned the screen, her jaw tight. "This is insane. Deborah's always been selfish, but this is next level. You need to confront him, Em. Tonight. But stay calm, for Sophie's sake. She doesn't need to hear you two fighting." I nodded, but my mind was racing. Confronting Nathan meant facing the possibility that he'd chosen his mother over us, over Sophie. The thought made my stomach twist, a mix of fear and fury. I glanced at the stairs, picturing Sophie's small form curled under her blanket. She deserved better than this. I deserved better. Lila's words hung in the air, but my mind was already spiraling. The kitchen clock ticked past 9 each second, a reminder that Nathan still wasn't home. His words echoed in my head, "I'm not the bad guy." But the empty bank account told a different story. I checked my phone. No texts from him, just James's message promising to call. I needed more than promises. Sophie needed her treatment money back. I poured Lila a coffee, the pot shaking in my hands, and we sat on the couch, the email glowing on my laptop like an accusation. Sophie's treatment fund wasn't just money. It was hope, sleepless nights, and every extra shift I'd taken at the diner. And now it was funding Deborah's cruise. "I can't just wait for him," I said, my voice low but firm. "I need to know why he did this." Lila nodded, sipping her coffee. "I get it, Em, but don't let him twist this. He needs to own up." Her eyes softened. "How's Sophie doing?" "She seemed okay at her last appointment. She's stable for now," I said, my throat tight. "But her next round of chemo is in 2 months. We needed that money for the copays, the meds, everything." I rubbed my temples, the weight of it all pressing down. Sophie's smile flashed in my mind, the way she'd giggle when I braided her hair. I couldn't let her down. The front door creaked open and Nathan stepped in, his jacket damp from the rain. His eyes flicked between me and Lila, and I saw a flicker of unease. "Hey," he said, hanging his keys on the hook. "Didn't expect a late-night coffee date." I stood, my pulse hammering. "We need to talk. Now." I pointed to the laptop, the email still open. "Why is Sophie's treatment money paying for your mom's cruise?" Nathan's face tightened, but he didn't look surprised. He ran a hand through his hair, a habit when he was cornered. It's not what you think. Mom needed this trip. She's been through a lot, and I thought..." "You thought I cut him off," my voice sharper than I meant. "That's our daughter's money, Nathan. For her life. You didn't even ask me." Lila shifted her presence, a quiet anchor, but she stayed silent, letting me lead. Nathan sighed, dropping onto a chair. "I was going to tell you. I just needed time to figure it out. Mom's been depressed since Dad died, and this cruise was her dream. I thought we could cover Sophie's stuff later. Later? My voice cracked. Nathan, Sophie doesn't have later. Her treatments are now. You know how much we've fought for her. I stepped closer, my hands clenched. How could you choose your mom over her? He looked away, his jaw tight. It's not choosing M. I love Sophie. You know that. Mom needed me too. I figured we'd find a way like we always do. I stared at him, the man I'd married 7 years ago who'd carried Sophie on his shoulders at the county fair, who'd promised to stand by us. His words felt hollow, like an excuse he'd rehearsed. Find a way, I repeated. With what? My tips. Your part-time mechanic gigs. We barely make rent some months. Lila cleared her throat. Nathan, you get how serious this is, right? Sophie's health isn't a gamble. That money was hers. Nathan's eyes flashed with irritation. I don't need a lecture, Lila. I'm fixing it. I'll talk to Mom, see if she can pay some back. Some, I said, my voice rising. All of it, Nathan. Every cent. And why does your mom get to decide what happens to our daughter's future, I thought of. Deborah's smirk at our wedding. Her whispered comment that I was lucky to land her son. She'd always acted like I was temporary, but Sophie was her blood. Nathan stood his chair, scraping the floor. You're blowing this out of proportion. I'm not the bad guy here. I'm trying to keep everyone happy. He grabbed his jacket. I need air. We'll talk tomorrow. The door slammed behind him, and the silence was deafening. Lila touched my arm. You okay? No, I admitted, sinking onto the couch. My eyes burned, but I refused to cry. I trusted him, Lila. I thought we were a team. I glanced at Sophie's drawing on the fridge, the three of us under that crayon sun. It felt like a lie now. Lila hugged me, her warmth grounding. You're not alone, Em. We'll figure this out. But you need to hold him accountable. For Sophie. I nodded, but my mind was racing. Nathan's dodge, his casual dismissal, gnawed at me. I thought of calling Deborah, demanding answers, but the idea of her smug voice made my skin crawl. Instead, I grabbed my phone and texted James, Nathan's older brother. He'd always been kind, distant from Deborah's grip. James, did you know? Nathan gave Sophie's treatment money to your mom for a cruise? His reply was almost instant. What? No way. I'm so sorry. Mom's always pulled this crap with him. Call me tomorrow. We'll talk. I set the phone down, my hands trembling. James's words confirmed what I'd feared. Deborah's hold on Nathan wasn't new. But knowing that didn't ease the ache. I looked at the staircase, imagining Sophie's soft snores upstairs. She deserved a father who fought for her, not one who caved to his mother's whims. The rain outside slowed, but the storm inside me was just beginning. The next morning, I woke to Sophie's soft humming from her room, a melody she'd made up during her hospital stays. I was 32, bleary-eyed, the couch, my makeshift bed after Nathan's exit last night. His words echoed in my head. I'm not the bad guy. But the empty bank account told a different story. I checked my phone. No texts from him, just James's message promising to call. I needed more than promises. Sophie needed her treatment money back. I made Sophie's favorite blueberry pancakes, forcing a smile as she bounced into the kitchen, her bald head covered with a pink beanie. Mommy, can we go to the park today? She asked, syrup dripping from her fork. Maybe this afternoon, sweetie? I said, my heart twisting. I wanted to give her normal days, not hospital rooms and arguments. After breakfast, I called James while Sophie colored at the table. He answered on the first ring. I'm still reeling, he said, his voice heavy. Mom's always leaned on Nathan, but this is low, even for her. She's got him wrapped around her finger, always has. I cut her off years ago for the same kind of crap. I gripped the phone, pacing the living room. James, she took 10 grand from Sophie's fund. For a cruise. How do I even start to fix this? You confront her, he said. She won't listen, but you need to see her for what she is. Nathan's too deep in her web to stand up to her. I'll back you whatever you need. His words lit a spark in me, anger mixing with resolve. Deborah had to know what she'd done. I hung up, kissed Sophie's forehead, and called Lila to watch her for a few hours. I'm going to Deborah's. I told her, my voice steady despite the churn in my gut. Lila arrived, her nurse's bag slung over her shoulder. Be careful, Em, she said, hugging me. Deborah's not going to make this easy. The drive to Deborah's house was a blur, the Ohio suburbs gray under a heavy sky. Her house loomed at the end of a cul-de-sac, all brick and manicured shrubs paid for by Nathan's dad before he passed. I parked, my hands clammy on the steering wheel. I'd never confronted her alone before. Nathan was always there, smoothing things over, making excuses for her sharp tongue. I knocked, and Deborah opened the door, her hair swept up a silk scarf around her neck. Emily, she said, her smile thin. This is a surprise. Nathan's not here. I'm not here for Nathan, I said, stepping inside before she could protest. The foyer smelled of lavender, and I spotted new luggage stacked by the stairs, tags still attached. My stomach lurched. We need to talk about the money you took. Sophie's treatment money. Her eyes narrowed, but she gestured to the living room. Come sit. You're clearly upset. Her tone was patronizing, like I was a child throwing a tantrum. We sat on her pristine white couch, a glass coffee table between us, stacked with travel magazines. Caribbean beaches stared up at me, mocking. Deborah, that $10,000 was for Sophie's leukemia treatments, I said, my voice low but firm. Nathan gave it to you for a cruise. You need to give it back. Now. She leaned back, crossing her arms. Emily, you're being dramatic. Nathan offered that money because he knows I've had a hard year. Losing my husband wasn't easy, you know. I deserve this trip. Deserve, I repeated, my pulse spiking. Sophie's fighting for her life. She's 6, Deborah. That money was for her chemo, her hospital bills. How can you justify this? She waved a hand, her rings glinting. Nathan said you'd find more money. You always do, don't you? Working those little shifts, scraping by? Sophie will be fine. Her lips curved into a smirk. Besides, Nathan wanted to do this for me. He's a good son. Her words hit like a slap. I gripped the armrest, my nails digging into the fabric. A good son? What about being a good father? That's his daughter, your granddaughter. Doesn't she matter to you? Deborah's smile faded, her eyes cold. Don't lecture me about family, Emily. Nathan knows where his loyalties lie. Maybe if you were a better wife, he wouldn't feel so torn. I stood, my legs shaking, anger flooding my chest. You don't get to twist this. You took money that could save Sophie's life. I'm not leaving until you agree to pay it back. She rose, towering over me in her heels. You're in my house, Emily. I don't owe you anything. If you're so worried, talk to Nathan. He made the choice. She turned, heading for the door, her scarf fluttering like a flag of dismissal. I followed, my voice rising. This isn't over, Deborah. You can't just walk away from this. But she opened the door, her expression final, and I stepped outside, the air biting my face. The door clicked shut behind me, and I stood on her porch, my breath visible in the cold fury and hurt clawing at my heart. She hadn't even blinked. I stood frozen on Deborah's porch, the cold air biting my cheeks, her words echoing in my skull. A better wife. The accusation burned, twisting the knife of Nathan's betrayal deeper. I was 32, and the life I'd built with him felt like a house of cards collapsing under his mother's shadow. I drove home, my knuckles white on the wheel, replaying every moment of that smug dismissal. Deborah hadn't even flinched at Sophie's name. My daughter, her granddaughter. When I pulled into our driveway, Lila was on the couch reading to Sophie, who clutched a coloring book. Lila's eyes met mine, searching. "How'd it go?" she whispered, closing the book. I shook my head, leading her to the kitchen. Sophie's laughter drifted from the living room, a sound that usually warmed me, but now felt like a fragile thread. "She didn't care," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Deborah acted like Sophie's treatments were my problem. Said Nathan chose to give her the money." Lila's jaw tightened. "That's disgusting." "What about Nathan? Have you heard from him?" "Nothing," I said, checking my phone for the 10th time. No texts, no calls. Just James's earlier message still unanswered. I sank into a chair, the weight of it all pressing down. "Lila, what if he's with her right now, planning her stupid cruise while Sophie's counting on us?" She squeezed my hand. "You can't think like that. Focus on Sophie. We'll deal with Nathan when he shows up." But that was the problem. Nathan wasn't showing up. Not for me, not for Sophie. I thought of our wedding, his vows in that small church promising to be my partner. Where was that man now? I stood needing to move and busied myself washing dishes, the hot water stinging my hands. Sophie's voice called from the living room. "Mommy, look at my picture." I dried my hands and walked over, forcing a smile. Her drawing showed a rainbow over a house, but the figures were just her and me. "No, Nathan. It's beautiful, sweetie," I said, my throat tight. Had she sensed his absence already? At 6, she shouldn't have to. That evening, after Lila left and Sophie was tucked in, I sat on the stairs staring at the front door. Nathan finally walked in at 10, his eyes tired, his jacket slung over his shoulder. He started, but I cut him off standing. "Where were you?" I asked, my voice low to keep Sophie from waking. "I went to your mom's today. She said you gave her Sophie's money because you wanted to. Is that true?" He sighed, dropping his jacket on the banister. "You went to Mom's? Why didn't you just wait for me? I told you I'd handle it." "Handle it?" I stepped closer, my hands trembling. "Nathan, you took $10,000 from our daughter's treatment fund for your mom's vacation, and you're acting like I'm the one overreacting." He rubbed his face, his voice sharp. "She's my mom. She's been a wreck since Dad died. I thought this would help her, okay? I didn't think it'd be this big a deal." My chest ached like I'd been punched. "Not a big deal. Sophie's leukemia isn't a big deal. We've been saving for years, Nathan." "Years? And you threw it away without even talking to me." He looked at me, his eyes hard. "You don't get it. You've got your sister, your friends. Mom only has me." I couldn't say no to her. I stared at him, the man I'd loved since I was 25, the father of my child. "And what about Sophie? What about me? Don't we matter?" My voice broke, but I didn't care. "You're her father. You're supposed to fight for her." He turned away, heading for the stairs. "I'm doing my best. You're not the only one stressed out." He paused, not looking back. "I'll talk to Mom tomorrow. Just give me some space." He walked upstairs, leaving me in the dark living room, the silence suffocating. I sank onto the couch, my hands covering my face. His best wasn't enough. I thought of Sophie's rainbow drawing the empty space where he should have been. Deborah's cold smirk flashed in my mind, then Nathan's excuses piling like bricks on my chest. I'd trusted him to protect us, but he'd chosen her. And Sophie was the one paying the price. 3 months had passed since that night on the couch, and I was 32, sitting in the sterile glow of Sophie's hospital room. The intensive care unit smelled of antiseptic, and the hum of machines was a constant reminder of her fragile state. Sophie's leukemia had taken a sharp turn, her fever spiking her body too weak for the next chemo round, without funds we no longer had. I held her small hand, her fingers cool against mine, and tried to focus on her steady breathing. But my mind was a storm. The hospital bill sat on the tray table, its numbers blurring through my exhaustion, $15,000, due with more to come. Nathan had promised to fix things, but his fixes were empty words. I'd called him twice today, leaving voicemails he hadn't returned. My sister Hannah had offered to loan us a few hundred, but it was a drop in the bucket. Sophie needed her treatment now, not later. A soft knock broke my thoughts. The door swung open, and there was Deborah striding in like she owned the place. Her skin was bronzed from her Caribbean cruise. Her hair swept into a sleek bun, and a gaudy turquoise necklace gleamed against her white blouse. She carried a bouquet of lilies, their scent cloying in the small room. I froze, my grip tightening on Sophie's hand. "What was she doing here, Emily?" she said, her voice bright, as if we were meeting for coffee. "I thought I'd pop by to see my granddaughter." She set the flowers on the counter, her heels clicking on the tile. "How's our little fighter doing?" I stared, my pulse hammering. Our little fighter, the nerve of her waltzing in after stealing Sophie's lifeline. "She's not doing well," I said, my voice low, controlled. "She needs treatment we can't afford. Because of you." Deborah's smile didn't falter. "Oh, Emily, let's not start that again. Nathan told me you're struggling, but I'm sure you'll sort it out." She adjusted her necklace, the stones catching the light. "I brought flowers to cheer her up. Hospitals are so dreary, aren't they?" Before I could respond, Sophie stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She looked so small in the oversized bed, her beanie slipping to one side. "Grandma?" she said, her voice faint but curious. "Did you have fun on your trip?" My heart stopped. Sophie's words were innocent, but they hit like a sledgehammer. She knew about the cruise. I'd never told her, shielding her from the truth, but she must have overheard something, maybe from Nathan's careless chatter. Deborah's eyes flicked to me, then back to Sophie, her smile tightening. "It was lovely, sweetheart," Deborah said, leaning closer. "Beautiful beaches, warm sun. You'd love it when you're better." I stood my chair, scraping the floor. "Don't," I snapped, my voice shaking. "Don't talk to her like everything's fine. That trip cost her treatment, Deborah. You're standing here tanned and happy while she's fighting to breathe." Deborah straightened, her expression hardening. "Emily, this is hardly the place. I'm here to support Sophie, not argue with you." "Support?" I laughed, bitter and raw. "You took $10,000 from her fund. You knew what it was for. And you spent it on yourself." My hands clenched, nails biting into my palms. "Do you even care that she's in here because of you?" Sophie's eyes widened, darting between us. "Mommy!" she whispered, her voice trembling. I knelt beside her, forcing my face to soften, but inside I was unraveling. She shouldn't have to hear this, shouldn't have to see her grandmother's indifference. "Shh, sweetie, it's okay," I said, stroking her hand. "Just rest." But it wasn't okay. Nothing was. Deborah's presence, her casual cruelty, was a slap I couldn't unfeel. Deborah stepped back, adjusting her purse. "I don't need to take this," she said, her voice icy. "I came to see Sophie, not to be attacked. Nathan warned me you'd be like this." "Nathan," I repeated, standing again, my voice rising. "Where is he? Why isn't he here fighting for his daughter?" "Oh, right. He's too busy bankrolling your vacations." The words spilled out, each one a shard of glass. I didn't care who heard. The nurses at the desk could stare all they wanted. Deborah's lips pressed into a thin line. "You're hysterical, Emily. I'll come back when you're calmer." She turned for the door, but I grabbed her arm, my fingers digging in. "No," I said, my voice a growl. "You don't get to walk away. Not this time. You're going to face what you've done." My heart pounded, rage and grief colliding. Sophie's quiet question echoed in my mind, her innocent voice asking about the trip that might cost her everything. Deborah wrenched her arm free, her eyes blazing, but I didn't back down. The hospital room felt like a pressure cooker. Sophie's monitors beeping faster, mirroring my racing heart. I was 32, and every ounce of restraint I'd clung to was gone. "Face it," Deborah hissed, her voice low but venomous. "You're the one who can't face reality, Emily. Nathan chose to help me because you've never understood family. You think you're so perfect, but you're dragging him down." Her words cut deeper than I expected, slicing into insecurities I'd buried years ago. I opened my mouth, but the door swung open, and Nathan stepped in his face, pale, his work boots still dusty from the garage. "What's going on?" he asked, looking between us, his voice tight. I turned on him, my voice shaking with fury. "You tell me, Nathan? Your mom's here fresh from her cruise while Sophie's fighting for her life. Where were you when I called, when our daughter needed you?" Nathan's eyes darted to Sophie, who was watching, her small face crumpled with confusion. Calm down," he said, stepping closer. "This isn't the place. Let's talk outside." "No." I snapped, my voice echoing in the small room. "We're talking here. Right now. Sophie deserves to know why her treatment's delayed. Why her dad took her money and gave it to her." I pointed at Deborah, my hand trembling. "Tell her, Nathan. Tell her why you let this happen." Deborah scoffed, folding her arms. "Don't be ridiculous. Sophie doesn't need this drama. Nathan, take her outside." But Nathan didn't move. His eyes locked on mine, and for a moment I saw something flicker, guilt maybe, or shame. Then it vanished, replaced by a hardness I hadn't seen before. You're making this worse," he said, his voice low. "I didn't just give Mom the money. I thought I could replace it. I took extra shifts, asked for a loan. But it's gone, okay, and I've been covering her bills since she got back. She needed help." My breath caught the room spinning. Covering her bills, I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. "You mean more money?" "From where, Nathan? We're drowning in debt. You took more from us." He looked away, his jaw tight. "It wasn't like that. Mom's house payments were behind." "I had to! I shouted, not caring that a nurse peeked in her clipboard, frozen. "You had to save your mom's house while Sophie's in intensive care." "What about our home? What about our daughter?" My voice broke, tears burning my eyes, but I didn't stop. "You lied to me. You said you'd fix it, but you've been funneling money to her this whole time." Sophie whimpered, clutching her blanket, and my heart shattered. I knelt beside her, whispering, "I'm sorry, sweetie," but the damage was done. She'd heard it all. Nathan stepped toward her, but I blocked him, my body a shield. "Don't," I said, my voice raw. "You don't get to comfort her now." Deborah cleared her throat, her voice cutting through. "This is exactly why Nathan needs me. You're unhinged, Emily. You can't even keep it together for your own child." She turned to Nathan. "Let's go. She's clearly not rational." Nathan hesitated, his eyes on Sophie, but then he nodded, following Deborah toward the door. "We'll talk later, Em," he muttered, his voice hollow. I stood there, my chest heaving, as the door clicked shut behind them. Sophie's small sob broke the silence, and I climbed onto the bed, pulling her close, her body trembling against mine. The monitors beeped, the hospital lights flickered, and I felt like I was drowning. Nathan hadn't just betrayed me. He'd abandoned Sophie, choosing his mother's comfort over her survival. And I'd trusted him, loved him, built a life with him. Now, it was all ash. A month after that hospital room showdown, I was 32, standing in my sister Hannah's cramped apartment in Columbus, surrounded by cardboard boxes and Sophie's toys. The air smelled of fresh paint, a new start we desperately needed. Sophie was curled up on a pull-out couch, coloring a picture of a butterfly, her hospital bracelet still loose on her wrist. Her fever had stabilized, but her next treatment loomed, and our bank account was a ghost town. Nathan's betrayal, choosing Deborah's bills over Sophie's life, had left me raw, but I was done waiting for him to fix it. I zipped up a duffel bag, my hands steady despite the ache in my chest. Leaving our home had been brutal. I'd packed in the dead of night, Sophie asleep in the car, and left Nathan a note on the kitchen counter. I'm taking Sophie. We can't stay. No explanation, no pleas. He didn't deserve them. His voicemails piled up, each one a mix of apologies and excuses, but I hadn't answered. Not yet. Hannah poked her head into the living room, her ponytail swinging. You okay? Em? Need help unpacking? She'd offered her place without hesitation, her one bedroom, a lifeline when I had nowhere else to turn. I'm good, I said, managing a small smile, just figuring out what's next. I glanced at Sophie, who was humming softly, her crayons scattered. She was my why, my everything. I couldn't let her see me crumble. After tucking Sophie in, I sat at Hannah's kitchen table, a laptop glowing in the dim light. My fingers hovered over the keys. I'd spent weeks replaying Deborah's smugness, Nathan's cowardice, and Sophie's trembling sobs. Enough. I needed to act not just for Sophie's treatment, but for my own sanity. I opened a browser and searched for legal aid, my heart pounding. Could I hold Nathan accountable? Could I make Deborah pay? A website for a local law firm caught my eye. Free consultations for family disputes. I clicked, skimming their services. They specialized in financial misconduct. My mind flashed to the $10,000 cruise, the extra bills Nathan had covered. It wasn't just theft. It was a betrayal of trust, of Sophie's future. I filled out their contact form, typing a summary of the situation, my hands shaking with a mix of fear and resolve. My husband used our daughter's medical fund for his mother's vacation. I need help getting it back. The next morning, I drove to the law firm, Sophie in tow, her stuffed bunny clutched tight. She'd insisted on bringing it, calling it her brave friend, and I didn't argue. The office was small, with worn carpet and a receptionist who smiled warmly. Ms. Miller, Rachel will see you now, she said, leading us to a back room. Rachel, the lawyer, was in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense vibe. She shook my hand, then crouched to Sophie's level. Hey there, what's your bunny's name? Fluffy, Sophie said, shy but smiling. Rachel grinned, then gestured for me to sit. Tell me everything she said, her pen poised over a notepad. I took a deep breath and spilled it all, the missing $10,000, Deborah's cruise, Nathan's lies about replacing the money, and his secret payments for her bills. Sophie played quietly in the corner coloring, but I kept my voice low, shielding her from the details. Rachel listened, her expression darkening. This is serious, Emily. If Nathan transferred funds without your consent, and if Deborah knew it was for your daughter's medical needs, we might have a case. Fraud, maybe even undue influence. But it won't be easy. Family cases never are. I nodded, my stomach twisting. I don't care if it's hard. Sophie needs her treatment. I can't let them get away with this. She leaned forward, her voice firm but kind. Good. We'll start by gathering evidence, bank statements, emails, anything showing the transfer and their knowledge of the fund's purpose. I'll also look into Nathan's financial decisions. If he's been funneling more money to his mother, that strengthens our case. I exhaled, a flicker of hope sparking. For the first time in months, I felt like I was doing something, not just surviving. What about Sophie? I asked. Can we get the money back in time for her next treatment? Rachel's face softened. We'll push for an emergency injunction to freeze Deborah's assets, but it's a long shot. In the meantime, have you considered other ways to cover the costs? Crowdfunding grants? I hesitated, pride prickling. Asking for help felt like admitting defeat, but Sophie's face, her quiet strength, flashed in my mind. I've thought about it, I said. I didn't want to beg. It's not begging, Rachel said. It's fighting for your daughter. You're not alone in this. Her words landed like a lifeline, and I nodded, resolve hardening. As we left the office, Sophie skipped ahead, Fluffy bouncing in her arms. I watched her, my chest tight but lighter. I was scared, but I was moving, building something stronger than Nathan's lies. Back at Hannah's, I opened my laptop again, this time to a crowdfunding site. My fingers hovered, then typed, "Help save Sophie, a mother's fight." I wasn't just fighting Deborah or Nathan. I was fighting for us. That night, I sat cross-legged on Hannah's kitchen floor, the laptop balanced on a stool, its screen casting a soft glow. I was 32, and for the first time in months, I felt a pulse of purpose. Sophie slept in the next room, her soft snores a reminder of why I was doing this. The crowdfunding page stared back at me, the title, "Help Save Sophie Bold," against a photo of her smiling at last year's pumpkin patch, her beanie bright pink. I'd poured my heart into the description, every word a plea and a promise. Now I just needed the courage to hit publish. Hannah slid a mug of tea across the floor, settling beside me. "You sure about this, Em? Putting it all out there?" Her voice was gentle, but her eyes held the same worry I'd seen when I first showed up at her door. I wrapped my hands around the mug, the warmth grounding. "I'm not sure about anything," I admitted. "But Rachel's right. This isn't begging, it's fighting. Sophie deserves that." I thought of her skipping out of the lawyer's office, Fluffy swinging in her grip. She was braver than I'd ever been. I could be brave for her. Hannah nodded, her hand on my shoulder. "Then do it. You've got this." Her faith in me, steady and unshakable, was a tether I hadn't realized I needed. I took a breath and clicked publish. The page went live, a tiny ripple in the vast internet. My stomach twisted with vulnerability. Strangers would read about Sophie's leukemia, Nathan's betrayal, my desperation. I'd always kept our struggles private, smiling through diner shifts, even when bills piled up. But pride wouldn't save Sophie. This might. The next morning, I checked the page before Sophie woke. My jaw dropped. Over 500 raised overnight, with messages from people I'd never met. Praying for Sophie, one read. "You're a strong mom," said another. I blinked back, tears overwhelmed. Hannah peeked over my shoulder, whistling. "Look at that, Em. People see you." I nodded, but my mind was already racing. 500 was a start, but we needed thousands. I couldn't just wait for donations. I called Rachel, catching her before her first meeting. "Any updates on the case?" I asked, pacing Hannah's small balcony, the city humming below. "We're building a strong file," Rachel said, her voice crisp. "I've got bank records showing Nathan's transfers to Deborah, and we're drafting a demand letter for her to repay the $10,000. If she refuses, we'll file for a lawsuit. But Emily, I need you to keep digging. Any texts, voicemails, or emails from Nathan admitting he took the money could seal this." "Got it," I said, my resolve hardening. I hung up and scrolled through my phone, finding a voicemail from Nathan I'd ignored last week. His voice crackled through, hesitant. "Em, I know you're mad, but I didn't mean for this to happen. I thought I could cover Mom's stuff and still help Sophie. Call me back." I saved it, my hand steady. His words weren't an apology, they were evidence. By afternoon, I was back at the laptop, drafting a social media post to spread the crowdfunding link. My fingers hesitated, then typed. "My daughter. Sophie is 6 and fighting leukemia. Her treatment money was taken, but we're not giving up. Help us keep her smiling." I attached a video, one I'd recorded at Hannah's urging. In it, I sat on her couch, my voice soft but firm, telling Sophie's story, her love for butterflies, her courage through chemo, and our fight to get her what she needs. I didn't mention Nathan or Deborah, keeping it about Sophie. The vulnerability made my skin crawl, but I posted it anyway. Within hours, the post spread. Friends from high school shared it, then their friends, then strangers. Donations climbed to $2,000 each, one a spark of hope. A local news blog picked up the story, calling me a mother fighting for her daughter's life. Reading that, I felt exposed but empowered. I wasn't just Emily, the diner waitress who'd lost everything. I was Sophie's mom, and I was moving mountains. That evening, I sat with Sophie, helping her string beads into a bracelet, her small fingers careful. "This one's for you, Mommy," she said, sliding a blue bead onto the string. "Because you're my hero." I swallowed hard, my eyes stinging. "You're my hero, kiddo," I said, kissing her forehead. Her words lit something inside me, a quiet fire. I wasn't just fighting for her treatment. I was showing her what it meant to stand up, to keep going when the world tried to break you. As Sophie drifted to sleep, I stepped onto the balcony, the city lights blurring below. My phone buzzed, another donation pushing us past $3,000. I closed my eyes, letting the cool air steady me. Nathan's voicemails, Deborah's smirk, the hospital bills, they were still there, heavy as ever. But I wasn't the woman who'd begged Nathan to fix things. I was building something new, piece by piece. I opened my eyes, my gaze fixed on the horizon, and whispered to myself, "We're going to make it." 3 months after I hit publish on Sophie's crowdfunding page, I was 32, standing in a bustling community center in Columbus, the air thick with the scent of coffee and fresh-baked cookies. Balloons bobbed against the ceiling, and a banner read, "Sophie's Strength Fundraiser." I'd organized this event with Maya, a local cancer survivor who'd reached out after seeing my video. The room hummed with neighbors, strangers, and a few familiar faces, all here for Sophie, who was at Hannah's, too weak for crowds, but stable enough for hope. I adjusted the microphone, my palms sweaty. The crowdfunding campaign had raised $12,000, enough for Sophie's next treatment, which she'd started last week. Her doctors were cautiously optimistic, and I clung to that like a lifeline. But tonight wasn't just about money. It was about showing Sophie we weren't alone, that people cared. I cleared my throat, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. "Thank you all for being here," I said, scanning the crowd. "Sophie's fighting hard, and your support is keeping her going." The room clapped, their warmth wrapping around me. Maya stood beside me, her smile radiant. Emily's story touched me, she told the crowd, her voice clear. "I beat cancer 5 years ago, and seeing her fight for Sophie reminded me how much community matters." She handed me a check, won $500 from her own advocacy group. My eyes stung, but I smiled, whispering, "Thank you." As people mingled, donating at the tables, I spotted James near the back, his flannel shirt rumpled. He'd driven an hour to be here, his presence a quiet defiance of Deborah's influence. "Em," he said, pulling me aside, "this is incredible. Sophie's lucky to have you." His eyes held a weight, and I knew he was thinking of Nathan, who hadn't shown. "Thanks, James," I said, my voice soft. Any word from your mom? I hadn't seen Deborah since the hospital, but Rachel's demand letter had gone out, threatening a lawsuit if she didn't repay the $10,000. He shook his head. "She's furious. Called me last week saying you're tearing the family apart. Nathan's with her, doubling down. They're not backing off." My stomach twisted, but I nodded. I expected that. Rachel had warned me the case would be a battle, and Nathan's silence, his choice to stand with Deborah, cut deeper than I'd braced for. I glanced at the crowd, their chatter a reminder of what I'd built without him. A woman approached, her gray hair tied back, holding a quilt stitched with butterflies. For Sophie, she said, her voice warm. I saw your story online. Made this myself. I took at the fabric soft under my fingers and thanked her, my throat tight. Strangers were carrying us forward while my husband stood with the woman who'd stolen from us. Later, as I packed up donation jars, Maya pulled me aside. The blog post about you went viral locally, she said, showing me her phone. The headline read, Mother Fights for Daughter's Life. After family betrayal. My chest tightened. The truth was out there, raw and public, and part of me felt exposed, like I'd bared my soul to the world. Back at Hannah's, I tucked the quilt around Sophie, who was asleep, her breathing even. The fundraiser's success was a victory, but James's words lingered. Nathan and Deborah weren't just ignoring the lawsuit, they were painting me as the villain. I sat on the edge of Sophie's bed, the quilt's butterflies glowing in the moonlight. The community's love was a shield, but Nathan's absence, his betrayal, was a wound that hadn't stopped bleeding. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but all I could do was sit there, the weight of their choices pressing down my heart, caught in a silent storm. The morning after the fundraiser, I was 32, sitting in a courtroom that smelled of polished wood and stale coffee. My hands folded tightly in my lap. Sophie was with Hannah, safe but fragile, her treatment underway, thanks to the donations. The quilt from the stranger lay folded in my bag, a quiet reminder of the community's embrace. But here in this stark room, I faced the fallout of my choices. Rachel sat beside me, her briefcase open, papers neatly stacked. The lawsuit against Deborah had moved forward, and today was our first hearing. Deborah sat across the aisle, her posture rigid, a tailored blazer replacing her cruise-ready silks. Nathan was next to her, his eyes fixed on the floor, avoiding mine. I'd expected anger from him, maybe defiance, but his silence was worse. It was as if I'd become invisible, a stranger he'd once known. My chest tightened, not with the fiery rage of the hospital, but with a dull, heavy ache. He'd chosen her again. The judge, a woman with gray streaks in her hair, called the room to order. Rachel stood, her voice clear. Your Honor, my client, Emily Miller, seeks restitution of $10,000 wrongfully taken from her daughter's medical fund. We have evidence showing Nathan Miller transferred the funds to his mother, Deborah Miller, for a luxury vacation, fully aware of their intended purpose. Deborah's lawyer, a slick man in a pinstripe suit, countered, claiming the money was a gift and Nathan had acted within his rights. I gripped the edge of my seat, my nails biting into the wood. A gift. The word twisted in my gut, turning Sophie's lifeline into a casual handout. Rachel presented bank statements, Nathan's voicemail admitting the transfer, and hospital bills showing Sophie's urgent needs. Each document felt like a brick in a wall I was building, not just for justice, but for my own survival. When Nathan was called to speak, he stood, his shoulders slumped. I didn't mean to hurt Sophie, he said, his voice low, almost mechanical. I thought I could pay it back. My mom needed help, and I made a mistake. He didn't look at me, didn't look at Sophie's name on the documents. His words were hollow, a script he'd rehearsed to save face. The judge's eyes narrowed. Mr. Miller, you're saying you knowingly used funds designated for your daughter's medical treatment to pay for your mother's vacation and subsequent expenses? Nathan nodded, his jaw tight. Yes, ma'am. But I was going to fix it. His voice cracked, but it didn't reach me. I'd heard that promise before in voicemails in our kitchen in the hospital. It was worthless now. Deborah leaned forward, whispering to her lawyer, her face a mask of indignation. I caught her glance, brief but sharp, and it wasn't anger in her eyes, it was disdain. As if I was the one who'd betrayed her family, not the other way around. My throat burned, but I kept my face still, refusing to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. Rachel touched my arm, her voice low. We're doing well, Emily. The judge sees the truth. But the truth felt like a weight, not a victory. Nathan's admission, public and undeniable, should have felt like progress. Instead, it hollowed me out. He'd stood in a room full of strangers and admitted to choosing his mother over Sophie, over us. And he still wouldn't look at me. As the hearing adjourned, the crowd shuffled out, but I stayed seated, my hands cold. Rachel gathered her papers, promising to call with next steps. Deborah and Nathan left together, his hand on her elbow, guiding her like she was the victim. The courtroom emptied, leaving just me and the echo of Nathan's voice. I'd fought for Sophie for justice, and the world was rallying behind us. But the man I'd loved, the father of my child, had walked away without a glance. I stared at the empty witness stand, my heart sinking into a quiet, heavy void. 6 months after the fundraiser, I was 32, pushing Sophie's wheelchair through a park near Hannah's apartment, the spring air soft with the scent of blooming lilacs. Sophie's cheeks had a faint flush, her energy returning since her last treatment. I'd rented a small place of our own nearby, but today we were here, just the two of us, chasing a rare moment of normal. The park was quiet dogwood trees casting dappled shadows on the path, and I felt a stillness I hadn't known in years. Sophie pointed at a squirrel darting up a tree, her giggle bright. "Mommy, he's so fast," she said, her voice stronger than it had been in months. I smiled, slowing the wheelchair to let her watch. Her beanie was gone, replaced by a thin layer of dark fuzz on her scalp, a sign of her body fighting back. The crowdfunding money had covered her latest chemo, and Dr. Patel's last report was hopeful. It wasn't a cure, but it was time, and time was everything. We stopped by a bench, and I parked the wheelchair, sitting beside her. She pulled a small notebook from her pocket, one she'd started using to sketch flowers she saw. "Look, Mommy, a daisy," she said, showing me a wobbly pencil drawing. I traced the petals with my finger, my heart swelling. These moments, simple and fleeting, were what I'd fought for. My mind drifted to the courtroom, to Nathan's slumped shoulders and Deborah's cold stare. The lawsuit was still crawling forward, Rachel pushing for every cent, but I'd let go of expecting Nathan to change. His last voicemail a week ago had been a plea to see Sophie, but I'd replied with clear terms, supervised visits, no promises. I wasn't ready to trust him, maybe never would be. But sitting here with Sophie's laughter in my ears, I realized I didn't need his redemption to feel whole. I pulled out my own notebook, a worn leather one I'd started keeping after we moved. It wasn't a diary, not exactly, just fragments of thoughts, moments I wanted to hold on to. I flipped to a blank page and wrote, "Sophie saw a squirrel today." She laughed like she used to. The words felt sacred, a tether to this new life we were building. I'd spent so long fighting against Deborah's greed, Nathan's betrayal, the hospital bills, that I'd forgotten how to pause, how to just be. A breeze rustled the trees, and I closed my eyes, letting it wash over me. I thought of my old self, the Emily who'd clung to Nathan's promises, who'd believed love could fix anything. That woman was gone, replaced by someone quieter, steadier. I'd learned to lean on Hannah, on Lila, on strangers who'd become family through their donations. Trust wasn't about one person anymore. It was about the web of people who showed up. Sophie tugged my sleeve. "Can we feed the ducks?" she asked, pointing to a pond shimmering in the distance. I nodded, grabbing a bag of breadcrumbs from my purse. As we rolled toward the water, I felt a shift, like a knot loosening in my chest. The park, the ducks, Sophie's small hand reaching for the crumbs, they were enough. For the first time, I wasn't looking back at what Nathan had broken. I was here with her, and that was a victory. The pond glittered under the late afternoon sun, and I was 32, kneeling beside Sophie's wheelchair, helping her toss breadcrumbs to the ducks. Their quacks echoed a playful chaos that made her giggle, her small hands flinging crumbs with abandon. I watched her, my heart steady, the kind of calm I hadn't felt since before her diagnosis. The park was our sanctuary today, a bubble where the world's weight couldn't reach us. I tucked a strand of her new hair behind her ear, marveling at its softness. As the ducks swam away, I pulled my notebook from my bag, its pages worn from daily scribbles. I'd been writing more, not just moments, but questions, things I couldn't say aloud. I opened to a new page and wrote, "What does forgiveness look like when the hurt doesn't fade?" The question sat there, raw, but quiet. I didn't have an answer. Not for Nathan. Not for Deborah. But writing it felt like loosening a knot, letting it breathe. Sophie leaned against me, her eyes on the water. "Mommy, do ducks ever forget where home is?" she asked, her voice curious. I smiled, brushing her cheek. "No, sweetie, they always find their way back." Her question lingered, though stirring something deeper. I'd been so focused on protecting her, on fighting, that I hadn't stopped to wonder where my own home was now. Not our old house, not Hannah's apartment, but the place inside me where I could rest. My phone buzzed a text from Lila Yu at the park I'm nearby. I replied, inviting her to join us. She arrived minutes later, her nurse's sneakers crunching on the gravel, a thermos of coffee in hand. "Thought you could use this," she said, handing it to me. We sat on the grass, Sophie sketching in her notebook while Lila and I sipped in comfortable silence. "You look different," Lila said, finally, her eyes searching mine. "Lighter, maybe?" I nodded, staring at the pond. "I'm trying to be. It's not about forgetting what happened. It's about choosing what I carry." I thought of Nathan's last message, his request to see Sophie. I'd agreed to a supervised visit next week at a neutral place with Hannah there. Not because he deserved it, but because Sophie deserved a father, even a flawed one. I wasn't opening my heart to him again, just a door slightly for her. Lila tilted her head. "That's Big M. Letting him in, even a little. Most people wouldn't." I shrugged, my voice soft. "It's not for him. It's for me. I don't want to be someone who holds grudges forever. That's not who I want Sophie to see." The words surprised me, their truth settling like a stone in still water. I'd spent so long defined by Nathan's betrayal, by Deborah's cruelty. But here, with the ducks gliding and Sophie humming, I was more than that. I was enough. As the sun dipped lower, casting gold across the water, I stood brushing grass from my jeans. Sophie yawned, her notebook slipping to her lap. I wheeled her back toward the car, Lila walking beside us. Her presence, a quiet strength. The park faded behind us, but its peace stayed with me, a soft hum beneath my skin. I glanced at Sophie, her eyes half closed, and felt a certainty I hadn't known before. We were finding our way, not to the life we'd lost, but to one we were building step by slow step. A year after that hospital room broke me, I was 33, standing in the kitchen of our new apartment, a cozy one-bedroom with creaky floors and windows that let in the morning light. Sophie was at the table, stringing beads for a necklace, her laughter bright as she showed me a lopsided heart pendant. Her hair was growing back, a soft brown halo, and her latest checkup with Dr. Patel had brought the word we'd prayed for: remission. I stirred a pot of soup, the steam curling upward, and felt a quiet I'd almost forgotten existed. The apartment was ours, paid for with savings from my new job at a local bookstore. It wasn't glamorous, but shelving novels and helping kids pick out stories gave me a rhythm, a purpose outside the fight for Sophie's health. Our walls were bare, except for Sophie's artwork, swirls of color flowers and stars, each one a marker of days we'd reclaimed. I'd started a small garden on the balcony, just herbs, and a stubborn tomato plant, something to nurture with my own hands. This morning, we'd walked to the bookstore together, Sophie clutching a library book about constellations. She'd read aloud in the kids' section while I worked, her voice steady, drawing smiles from customers. On the way home, she'd slipped her hand in mine, saying, "Mommy, I like our new house. It feels happy." Her words landed soft, but heavy. A gift I tucked deep in my chest. Happy. We were getting there, one small moment at a time. I set the table ladling soup into bowls and glanced at a photo on the fridge me, Sophie, Hannah, and Lila at a picnic last month. James was there too, his arm around Sophie, who'd called him Uncle Jay for the first time. The lawsuit had ended weeks ago, with Deborah ordered to repay $7,000 less than I'd hoped, but enough to cover Sophie's final treatments. Rachel had called it a win, but for me, the real win was this: a life where Deborah's shadow no longer loomed. Nathan hadn't fought the visitation terms. He saw Sophie once a month, always with Hannah present at a park across town. I didn't go. Not out of anger, but because I needed space to be me, not the wife he'd betrayed. Sophie never asked why he wasn't here, and I wondered what she understood, what she carried in her quiet moments. I'd started reading her stories at night, ones about brave girls who built their own paths, hoping they'd sink in. As we ate, Sophie chatted about school. She'd started first grade, a milestone I'd once feared she'd never reach. "My teacher says I'm good at drawing," she said, spoon halfway to her mouth. "Can I make a picture for Dr. Patel?" "Of course," I said, my heart full. "He'd love that." I pictured Dr. Patel's kind eyes, his steady updates through the worst days. He'd been a rock like so many others who'd carried us here. After dinner, I washed dishes, the warm water soothing my hands. Sophie hummed in the living room, her beads clicking. I dried my hands and sat on the couch, pulling out a new notebook, this one with a blue cover, a gift from Lila. I'd filled half of it with lists, things Sophie loved, places we'd visit, dreams I hadn't dared to dream before. Tonight I wrote soup for dinner. Sophie's laugh. The way the light hits the balcony in the morning. These weren't just words. They were proof we'd survived. I looked out the window, the city lights soft in the dusk. The fight with Nathan, with Deborah, felt like another life, one I'd left behind. I wasn't the woman who'd begged for answers in that hospital room. I was Emily, Sophie's mom, a woman who'd learned to stand, to grow, to find joy in the smallest things. I closed the notebook, my breath slow, and listened to Sophie's hum, a melody of peace we'd earned. The next day, I was 33, walking through the hospital's familiar halls for Sophie's final checkup, her small hand swinging in mine. The fluorescent lights felt softer, the antiseptic smell less sharp. Sophie carried a folded drawing, a gift for Dr. Patel. Her lines wobbly but bold, a field of sunflowers under a clear sky. I carried a weight too, not of fear this time, but of something new, something I'd been piecing together in the quiet moments of our new life. Dr. Patel met us in his office, his smile warm as he reviewed Sophie's chart. "Remission is holding," he said, his voice steady. "She's strong, Emily. You both are." Sophie handed him the drawing, and he pinned it to his bulletin board right beside other patients' gifts. I watched her beam, my chest tight with gratitude. This wasn't just a medical victory. It was a chapter closing one we'd written together. Back home, I stood on our balcony, the tomato plant finally bearing a single red fruit, small but vibrant. Sophie was inside, practicing her spelling words, her voice a soft hum through the open door. I leaned against the railing, the city stretching out below, and thought about the woman I'd been a year ago, shattered, pleading, lost in Nathan's choices. That Emily had fought not just for Sophie, but for a truth I hadn't understood. Then healing wasn't about fixing what was broken. It was about choosing what to build next. I'd started volunteering at a local support group for parents of sick kids, sharing my story in a church basement over weak coffee. Last week, I'd spoken to a room of tired faces, my voice steady as I described Sophie's fight, the betrayal, and the community that carried us. A young mom, her eyes red, hugged me after whispering, "You gave me hope." Her words stayed with me, a mirror to my own journey. I wasn't just surviving. I was lighting a path for others, the way Maya and Lila had for me. Nathan's visits with Sophie continued brief and careful, but I no longer searched his face for the man I'd married. He was part of her story, not mine. Deborah's repayment, though partial, was a line drawn, a debt settled not in my heart, but in the world. I didn't hate her, didn't hate Nathan. Hate was too heavy, and I'd learned to travel light. Instead, I chose Sophie's laughter, the smell of basil from my garden, the weight of a good book in my hands. The lesson wasn't loud or grand. It was this betrayal can crack you open, but it also shows you where your strength lies. I'd found mine in the people who stayed in the small acts that rebuilt us. Sophie's drawings, Hannah's late-night talks, the quilt from a stranger. Trust wasn't about never being hurt. It was about knowing who deserved your faith and giving it anyway, not to those who'd failed you, but to those who showed up, including yourself. I stepped inside, closing the balcony door, and sat beside Sophie. She looked up, her spelling book open. "Mommy, what's your favorite word?" she asked, pencil poised. I thought for a moment, then smiled. "Enough," I said. "Because we are." She nodded like she understood and went back to her work. I watched her, the room warm with our shared quiet, and knew we'd found our way. What's the hardest lesson life has taught you about trust? And how did you keep going? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this journey resonated with you, please like and subscribe to join me for more real stories that matter. Share this with someone who needs a reminder they're not alone. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for carrying hope with me. Here's to healing, one step at a time.